Hey guys, it's Brandon Miniman from Pocketnow.com. The HTC Sensation and the Samsung Galaxy S2 are two of the hottest Android smartphones of all time. In this video, we're going to compare them on specs, hardware, software, benchmarks, web browsing, and a whole lot more so you can determine which of these super high-end phones are worth your hard-earned cash. Let's get to the comparison now. Alright, and so let's get started talking about price. The HTC Sensation is now shipping in Europe. You can bring it in unlocked to the US. It'll work on T-Mobile for the unsubsidized price of $750. It's a lot of money, but it's coming to T-Mobile in the US for around $200. It's also going to ship on Vodafone plus a host of other carriers around the world at a lower subsidized price. But again, if you want to bring it into the US, it's going to be expensive, but it'll work on T-Mobile if you want it a little bit early. The Galaxy S2 also is available in Europe right now, selling for a little bit cheaper, $700. If you import it to the US, it'll work on AT&T. Now, Samsung hasn't talked about availability in the US yet, but some of our research has shown that AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint are going to get the Galaxy S2 probably in Q4, in the October, November, December timeframe. Again, that hasn't been confirmed, but our guess is still that T-Mobile will not get the Galaxy S2, but all other carriers in the US and a lot of the carriers around the world will get the Galaxy S2 just like they got the Galaxy S1, or just the Galaxy S as it was called. Now let's talk about specifications. The HTC Sensation ships with Qualcomm's brand new 1.2 gigahertz Snapdragon dual-core CPU. This is the first time HTC has shipped a dual-core CPU. You also get 768 megabytes of RAM for multitasking. You get a gigabyte of ROM plus 8 gigabytes of storage provided by the microSD card included in the box. Now the Galaxy S2 is also spec'd with a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core CPU. This time it's the Samsung Exynos processor, a little bit different there. We get 1 gigabyte of RAM, which is more than the Sensation's 768, and built-in storage is either 16 gigs or 32 gigs, depending on which model you go for, which is really cool because there's also a microSD slot in the Galaxy S2. So you can expand the storage really high. If you're looking for the utmost in the storage, the Galaxy S2 is the winner in that respect. But other specs, they're pretty similar except for the fact that the Galaxy S2 has a little bit more RAM than does the Sensation. In terms of weight, the Sensation feels more substantial, higher quality in the hand. It's 148 grams. It feels, again, more solid. But the Galaxy S2 is a lightweight, 116 grams. It's also super thin. In fact, it is the thinnest smartphone on the planet. The Sensation's no slouch. It's pretty thin as well, around the 11.5 millimeter range, whereas the Galaxy S2 is about 8.6 millimeters thick. Both of these devices feel very thin. They're not very substantial in the pocket. But if you're looking for the device that feels the most high quality, you definitely want to go with the Sensation if that's important to you. They're both running on the latest version of Android, version 2.3. Obviously, no word if they're going to be upgraded to Ice Cream Sandwich. The hackers will probably get these devices up to speed when Ice Cream Sandwich gets released later this year, because these are going to be very popular devices, and popular devices have a very vibrant development community. Now let's talk about the hardware here. Both are slab devices. You get some sharper edges on the Samsung Galaxy S2. You get a nice little contoured glass here on the Sensation. Just gives it a nice visual pizzazz. And you also get a hardware button on the Galaxy S2. If you're somebody that likes the clickiness, the real feel of a hardware button, you'll definitely enjoy the home button on the Galaxy S2. HTC went with capacitive buttons. In fact, most HTC devices are the same. They look about the same, and you get that here with the HTC Sensation. Both have front-facing cameras, higher spec here, 2 megapixels versus VGA resolution, which is not even a full megapixel. A megapixel equals a million pixels if you multiply the resolution. Anyhow, we don't have to get into that. The screen size on both of these are the same, 4.3 inches diagonal, but you get the higher resolution display on the Sensation. QHD, 960 down, 540 across. On the Galaxy S2, you get 800 down by 480 across. Now, contrast is still better on the Galaxy S2, as we're going to see in a minute, thanks to the Super AMOLED Plus panel. HTC gives you Super LCD, which is also quite good, but it's not nearly as contrasty as what you get in the Galaxy S2. Flipping over to the back, we can see both of these have an 8 megapixel camera. Both are capable of shooting in full 1080p 30 frames per second, which is quite awesome. Both have a flash. In terms of battery, we've got a smaller battery on the Sensation, 1520 milliamp hours, and on the Galaxy S2 we have 1630 milliamp hours. Both of these devices will get you through the day, no problem. If you're using it a lot, which is great, but you're going to have to charge every day. This has, two processors in here. Of course, it's going to use a fair amount of juice. There are the speakers. They're both quite loud on both devices. Looking around the device, got the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack both on top. HTC puts the power standby button on the top. Samsung puts it on the side. Another cool thing about the Galaxy S2 is that you can take the device out of standby either by this button or the button on the side, so you get a little bit of versatility there. It's really nice to not have to reach up to the standby button when you're using the Galaxy S2. Okay, so let's get into some of the software here and talk more about how they compare. We're going to unlock both devices, and you're going to notice right off the bat, HTC gives you a functional lock screen. We get the weather here, and we can also quickly launch an application just by dragging the item into the circle. Galaxy S2, really just plain. All you get is the date and the time. So we're going to slide that off. And I've got pictures of waterfalls up here so that I can show you sort of how the screens compare. Right off the bat, you can see that the QHD resolution screen makes everything a little bit smaller. That is because the pixels are smaller. We have 256 pixels per inch on the Sensation, and we've got 217 pixels per inch on the Galaxy S2. In practice, this makes text a little bit sharper on the Sensation. Again, this is the first time we're seeing QHD resolution from HTC. Also, we get a 16:9 aspect ratio on the Sensation, and it's not exactly 16:9 on the Galaxy S2, which means movies look more true to life in terms of their aspect ratio and the top and the bottom not getting cut off on the Sensation. Okay, so let's jump into a picture here, and you're going to see that although the Sensation has a higher resolution display, they're very, very close in terms of image fidelity. In fact, contrast is much greater, much greater on the Galaxy S2. Some people think that the Super AMOLED here is a little bit unnatural, and that makes sense, but in terms of sheer contrast, for most people, the Galaxy S2 has the clearer, crisper screen. And we'll shrink this back and go to the home screens. Now we've got two entirely different interfaces to talk about here. We've got TouchWiz on the Samsung Galaxy S2 and Sense 3.0 on the Sensation. Let's look at TouchWiz. So TouchWiz is comprised of multiple home screens, and you can add and subtract, which you cannot do on the Sensation, and we can swipe from screen to screen. If we go into applications, this is the Samsung UI for accessing your applications. You have to go screen by screen like this, but you can also go to list view if you want to get a horizontal or vertically scrolling list, I should say. Let's go back to grid view. Now to add widgets, you tap and hold. You get this cool little pop-up. You tap on widgets, and these are all of the widgets that are available on the Galaxy S2. They're pretty good, but they're not nearly as good as what you get on HTC. So HTC, we get this carousel spinning home screen, very beautiful visuals throughout the entire Sense UI. I mean, this is really high quality stuff. You really just don't get that with the Samsung Galaxy S2. Heck, the weather animations even have sounds to them. I mean, come on, it's pretty good stuff. And of course, if you spin this really fast, you got to go really fast, they'll start to shrink in the background, and, well, woohoo, it's a little animated feature. Not that big of a deal. So here are the widgets on the Galaxy S2, kind of simple stuff. Not simple on the Sensation. So actually, go down here and we'll go to widgets and browse all HTC widgets. You get real high quality HTC widgets. I mean, interactive widgets that can be a couple different sizes. For example, if we go to, say, the calendar widget here, well, this only has one style, but some of these have a variety of different styles that you can switch through. That's great, but on the Galaxy S2, you can actually resize widgets, which is awesome. So, for example, if we go to the AccuWeather widget, tap and hold, we get a little grid. We can make it bigger and smaller. You cannot resize widgets on the HTC Sensation. This weather clock, you can't resize it. It can only be moved in one sort of way. And in terms of the app tray on the HTC Sensation, it's now divided by downloaded, frequent, and all applications. So I really like the ability to be able to go to frequent apps, so all of your most used apps sit right at the top. On the Galaxy S2, you kind of got to go for your apps, right? You can set these panels up and customize them, but it's not as convenient as being able to jump right to your frequently used apps on the HTC Sensation. All right, and let's talk benchmarks, the all-important. So we're going to jump into Quadrant Standard on both devices. Already ran the benchmark here. We got 3,226 on the Galaxy S2. Really impressive. Pretty good, too, here on the Sensation, 1,959. The Galaxy S2 obviously smokes the Sensation in the Quadrant test, but that's only one benchmark. So let's check out some other benchmarks, like SmartBench 2011. Okay, here are the results in SmartBench for the productivity index on the Galaxy S2, 3,842. On the Sensation, 2,795. Galaxy S2 also wins in the games index, 2274, 1696. Let's run one more benchmark, LinPack. Okay, here are the results, a little bit better here on the HTC Sensation, 46.215 megaflops, only 45.389 on the Samsung Galaxy S2. Easy to get these mixed up sometimes. So in terms of benchmarking power, the Samsung Galaxy S2 wins most of the time, but in terms of, it seems, sheer processing power, which is what the LinPack Pro is measuring, the HTC Sensation takes the cake. Now let's talk about web browsing, the all-important web browsing speed test. That's probably one of the best tests of the power of the phone, especially when you're loading complex web pages. Let's dive into the internet here, and we've got, of course, that page loaded. Both of these have the pinch out to see your tab screen, and here we are. So we are going to go to Pocketnow on both of these. So M. Okay, here we go. Let's load them. We're on the same Wi-Fi network here. Okay, it looks about a tie there. The Galaxy S2 might have been a little bit faster. Let's go to desktop version. See which gets there faster. We've got plugins turned to on-demand so that there is no sort of slowness happening because of flash content. Galaxy S2 finished first. Sensation is done a little bit after that. Very smooth on both, a little bit smoother on the Galaxy S2, a little bit choppy actually on the Sensation. We're actually going to zoom in a little bit. Double tap to zoom in, double tap to zoom in, happens pretty fast on both. Let's take a look at text. Since we're dealing with a higher pixel density on the Sensation, text should be a little bit sharper. It's very, very tough to tell. What you get on the Galaxy S2 is blacker text with better contrast. But on the Sensation, if you get a magnifying glass or you have very, very good eyes, you're going to see that the pixels are smaller and thus more difficult to see. Maybe we can actually see this on the camera if we go closer in. So if you take a look at that, it's kind of hard to determine, but text is a little bit sharper, not by much, on the Sensation than on the Galaxy S2. Okay, let's go to a really complex website. Let's zoom out here. We're going to go to Engadget, the long page. So we're going to go to Engadget here. Just going to load the mobile version really quick. It's going straight to the desktop view here on the Galaxy S2. Terms of use, not what I want. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it's loading, and as it's loading, we can flick down the page. You're going to see there's no checkerboards, which is great. That is the same for the Galaxy S2. A very, very good web browsing scenario here. And actually, we're going to go to Classic. Or actually, let's go to HD. And let's zoom in here, get a little bit close to that button, make it a big target. And boom. So both loading the HD version of Engadget. Again, very smooth scrolling even as it's loading on both. Thanks to these dual-core processors, they really do a great job. The Galaxy S2 beat the Sensation in loading this page. Let's do a screen rotation speed test real quick. Galaxy S2 was faster there. Galaxy S2 was faster there. Both do a great job at reflowing the column. So you can zoom in and it makes it look nice. We can zoom out. But in terms of sheer speed, it's really no contest. The Galaxy S2 is faster. Let's zoom in on, again, a big target here. And we're going to move it around and tap it at the same time. See again which one goes faster. Galaxy S2 won. It keeps winning. What's really nice about the Sensation, though, is that, I'm going to stop it, you get a full screen browsing experience, whereas here on the Galaxy S2, you always get the Android notification bar at the top. But in terms of web browsing, there's no question here. The Galaxy S2 takes the cake, even with the higher resolution screen, which should make for a kind of better browsing experience on the Sensation. Both are very good. Galaxy S2 is as fast as they come. It is extremely fast when it comes to browsing the web. And so we've got to give the points to the Galaxy S2 for that. So these are two very different, very high quality devices. At the end of the day, have their own strengths and weaknesses. If you want the fastest, thinnest, lightest Android smartphone out there, it's hard to beat the Samsung Galaxy S2. But if you want the most refined, the highest quality Android smartphone that also has a higher resolution display, the HTC Sensation will make you happy. At the end of the day, these are both true winners. It just matters what you value most in a smartphone. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, and thank you for watching. That's it for now.